So when you all arrived here, you put on your phone, you turn it on, and you expected to be able to dial the French 112. And that has been the case since ever, basically, when we got GSM. It's a massive European success. It is in all the rules. It should work. Except, as of last week, if you travel, well, last month, if you travel to the United States and you want to make an emergency call, you may actually not be able to do that anymore because AT&T sends you a message, hi, you have data, but you will not have voice because we switched off our 2G and 3G networks and our 4G implementation doesn't work with your phone. The French operator Free, which is 25% of the market here in France, told its customers, AT&T gave us a choice. Either all our customers have data, but nobody gets voice, or a small fraction of our customers gets voice over LTE and data, but the bulk, 80–90%, don't get anything. No data, no SMS or voice. And so they chose data and told people use WhatsApp calling, etc. People can't get to their authentication systems. People complain online. As of 1st of July, T-Mobile will switch off its network, 2G, 3G network in the US as well, and then Europeans and the rest of the world will be stuck. The Canadian Wireless Telecom Association warns for this and then says, but it's not just enough to have a 4G LTE phone. No, you need a 4G LTE phone with VoLTE roaming. Now that may sound like gibberish to you, and when I explain to you that it's really simple because you can just see the difference between the two phones over there. One supports voice over LTE roaming and the other one doesn't. And if you can't see the difference, then you're not crazy. It really took me a lot of looking and I still can't see what the difference is, not even in the specs. But one phone does and the other one doesn't. And why? But it's in the official documentation of AT&T. This is broken. You can't dial 911 with this phone. And it needs the cooperation of Samsung. It needs the cooperation of Qualcomm. It needs the cooperation of your home mobile network. It needs the cooperation of AT&T. If you have an iPhone, you have the biggest chance of that it will work, but no guarantees. So I made a simple guide for consumers to know what they can do to know that this works. And then basically what you need to do is use an iPhone, use the biggest mobile network of your country, buy a new phone each year, because last year's phone may not work anymore. You need to live in a big country, like important country, not something small like the Netherlands where I'm from, because the more phones are sold, the more important the country is. Don't travel, absolutely don't travel. Stay at home. If you want to be able to dial 911 or 112 in a 4G world, stay at home. And stay with the network, don't change mobile operators, and only use postpaid because prepaid has lots of trouble too. So don't use Android, don't live in a small country, that kind of thing. It's really bad. This is Vodafone Germany. They tell their customers, yes, we have 4G calling in our network, but we block access on our phones for calling over 4G to the emergency services. Your phone, by default, will revert back to 2G, 3G. So now you're in the United States, and what will your phone try to do? It will try to use the 2G, 3G network that has been shut down. You won't reach 911. It's your problem. And roaming, well, we all thought roaming just worked, you flip on your phone and you get connectivity and you can be called. Not with 4G calling. Your home network needs to have VoLTE active, and then it needs to have a roaming agreement with the network on the other side. There are about 900 networks in the world, 717 of them have LTE, 232 use VoLTE, and only 50 to 70 have roaming. Say what? So of all the networks in the world, a tenth can go to the United States and place a call. And then you would think, but we may have anonymous calls. There should be a standard that requires that if you can't make a call, you can still call emergency services. Well, this is a GSMA document from 6th of April, and it explains that it doesn't work because they know about the issue for ages already, but they think that they may want to reword a bit of the standard at some point in the near future. It's not a call to action like fix the software or anything. No, we will change the wording in the standard. And the shutdown is imminent because in Europe, Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom, and some of the other networks have all said by 2025 we will shut down 2G and 3G. I think the Swiss will start in 2024. North America is busy now, Asia, some places already. And that means that pretty soon, when you need to go to a nice conference like this, you won't be able to make emergency calls. That means the truck drivers driving through Europe can't call your PSAP. And then we will be in massive trouble. So, who needs to act? Well, you. Raise the alarm, please. Contact your MPs. Talk to your telcos. Also upgrade your PSAP to actually be able to deal with 4G calling. Go to your government. Ask them to demand that the industry stops 2G and 3G shutdown until they fix the standards. These standards are so crappy that you literally don't know which phone you can use to make a 4G call, and you won't know if it works next year, and you won't know if it works in a neighboring country. So tell them to stop it. Start an antitrust action against handset vendors, because if you don't buy enough phones, Samsung, Apple, Nokia, etc. can't help you. Demand that it works, demand global access, and make people verify and test, because that's what got us into this trouble. Everybody has a different standard, there are a million options, and nobody has chosen the same combination. And for the telecom sector, they really need to make a real standard. They need to test, fix, test, fix. They need to get chipsets and handsets to work for everybody in the world. And the network should allow any phone and make sure that it works. The great thing is, it will save their shareholders money, because testing a phone now costs a month of work on their side. And then fixes, and then testing again. It costs them real money. So if they would actually get it to work like GSM did, they wouldn't need to test everything for ages. It would save them a lot of money. It would save them liability lawsuits. It would save them antitrust lawsuits. It might save them consumer class action lawsuits. And while they're saving money, they're also saving lives. So, you know, what better can you get? Saving lives doesn't even need you to cost money in the long run. So this should be something that they should be able to be behind. I have a whole annex explaining all kinds of stuff that's going wrong in the world. The slides are online. You can find them on Twitter and LinkedIn. I will show you quickly my profile so that you can get my name right. And yeah, that's it.
Well, good. Thank you. Thank you for actually leaving a lot of time for questions, because I think you probably have opened up a Pandora's box here. I have a couple of questions to clarify here. You mentioned that, well, the root of problem here appears to be two things. One is there's a problem with the standardization. Standardization process went wrong for 4G and 5G,
Yep.
and that needs to be corrected.
Yes.
Number two is there's a business practice involved here where the carriers are choosing to blacklist phones and blacklist networks.
Yep.
Right. So those are the core of the problem. You mentioned that a recommendation you have is that the regulators should immediately stop the carriers from shutting down 2 and 3G networks until they get the standards right. Can you explain how that action is going to get us to the right standard? How does that create that dynamic that will get the standardization correct?
when you shut down the 2G, 3G network like AT&T did, it saves you hundreds of millions each year. It saves them so much money that AT&T was willing to spend last year $300 million US, including in free phones to some of its customers, to be able to shut down 2G and 3G networks this year. Of course, it didn't consider foreigners their customers, so those people didn't get new phones. But it gives you an idea of how much money they can save from doing this. So if you block them from doing that, it's an out-of-pocket cost for particularly the European operators who still have to do this. And that will get the boardroom's attention, because when you're losing that much money each year, then maybe somebody will call the nerds who run the testing department and go like, now guys, why didn't you do the standardization right? And why the hell am I out of pocket on a couple of $100 million? Fix that. You know, simple economics. And as you notice, I don't think that they will complain about the lives lost.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from the audience? Right there in front. All I can see is a light shirt.
I have just a remark, not a question, in fact. The last 3 days we have seen inspirational sessions by the industry, by people. But the last 3 sessions I found really well. But I would like to have them in the beginning of those 3 days, like a sort of disclaimer, like privacy issues are important, and video is important, but there are some kind of risks. Because some of my colleagues from Belgium, Belgium has an issue with biometrics, for example. They left already. They took the train or the plane. And that's really a pity that this session, was really inspirational, comes at the end.
Okay. Thank you for your input. But I think it's a sign that this conference is addressing such a wide range of issues that, it's a challenge to do the right timing, but thank you for your comment. Any other questions about?
Well, maybe I can add a little bit. In defense of the organization, they wanted me here on Wednesday morning, but Wednesday morning was King's Day in the Netherlands, and my family objected to me leaving on a public holiday. So I was allowed to come here on Friday, but yeah.
Any other questions? I have one. How is this going to affect eCall?
eCall, if there's no 2G and 3G, then eCall won't work, at least the current version. So then you will ask, but we are working on next generation eCall, and that should work over 4G. But since we don't have a 4G standard for calling, we can't build it into the car either. Because if you want to get it working with the European networks, for example, for eCall, you need to know the exact settings for each network. And as I said, it can easily cost up to a month of testing to get it working. And if you then need chipset support for the next 15 years, when the chipset vendors tell you that 12 months is really the maximum they can deliver on this, and you need to test and retest it in every roaming situation, of which the GSMA officially says that they can't actually do that in live networks, etc., blah, 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 then how are we going to get a standard that actually works? Anybody here who's worked on standardization knows most of it is sitting in a room, testing, and making sure you get all the options out so that you have a minimum set of things that work. Rough consensus, running code, test, fix, test, etc.
Another question is how aware are the providers in the industry aware that this is a problem? I think from our discussion previously, you mentioned to me that there is some awareness. And so if they are aware, why do they, I think what you're arguing is you want to see some pressure put on by the regulators to make sure they fix it. But what's the level of awareness that they currently have of the problem?
Well, here is a GSMA guide on VoLTE implementation, and it says emergency calls will probably not work. Next one. Challenges. This is from HMD, who make the Nokia phones. Yeah, we have all kinds of challenges with fragmented networks. We will not have call service in certain situations. We can't do stuff in live networks. It takes too long, etc. These guys actually found out that some chipset manufacturers blacklist networks. So they tried to get it working on a Dutch MVNO. They couldn't get it to work. Only when they decompiled the firmware, they found that there was a list of mobile network codes that were allowed to use VoLTE. Nobody had informed them. They were working with a network to get it working. It didn't work because it's in the firmware. If you call Samsung, I've been told by an operator, and you want VoLTE to work on your network, the first question is, how many tens of thousands of units are you going to buy from us? Otherwise, we won't enable VoLTE for you. So that's where we are. This is an IBO basis roaming roundtable. It's on YouTube. In the questions and answers, in the end, there is a French operator who just casually mentions that emergency calling doesn't work with roaming, but his main priority is to get lawful intercept working for the French police, because that is a really important issue that people are pressing him on. And yeah, emergency calling is just something that he mentions. Another operator explains the various difficulties that they have, and this also affects emergency calling. So they are aware. It is mentioned, it's common knowledge, but there is nobody who feels responsible to fix this. And unless we get, well, in the USA you had it with hotels where people couldn't call 911, and it had to be a little child and a sob story in a newspaper of her mother who was beaten to death by an ex-husband. And that's the level of story we probably need to get people to actually start fixing this. And I think that that's a bit too late.
Yeah, thank you for raising an example. I actually know the father of that victim. The law is called Kerry's Law, and you're absolutely, it's a good analogy. It took a federal law to require that every hotel provide direct access to 911. It was always technically capable of doing that, they just didn't do it. And so I think you're making a very good point that this seems like to address this problem, the regulators need to take an aggressive action to make sure this gets fixed.
Yeah.
So one last question before we turn it back over to Demetrios for the concluding of the conference. Okay. Thank you so much, Rudolf, for making us aware of this issue and for the excellent presentation.